I have a couple of perks being the Sportscasters president. One is calling all of our finalists and major award winners on the phone to tell them you're either up for or you've won an award. Nobody's unhappy when they get that phone call. In one case, in this one, every year the president gets to name one of his or her own people. And so, may I present my President's Award winner for 2025. It's named for former Presidents Stu Nahan and Chuck Benedict. It goes to Mr. Larry Stewart. A longtime and very important contributor to our profession as a sports writer, editor, and columnist for the old Los Angeles Herald-Examiner and then, of course, the Los Angeles Times for nearly 40 years. Larry was mainly known as the premier radio TV sports broadcasting columnist over the years. From a little burg in the Central Valley's San Joaquin Valley called Strathmore. It's a pretty farming community. It's not in the middle of nowhere, but I think you can see it from there. It's near the metropolis of Porterville. No? Halfway between Bakersfield and Fresno, a little east of the 99 and up the 65, as I recall. He started the local paper there and called in scores to the mighty Fresno Bee. Graduated from Fresno State back in '68 before embarking on his career. He was a member of this organization's board of directors in recent years. He's trying his hand at script writing these days, the story of the Strathmore High football team. Really not very good for a long time, many years. But somehow they found a way to win a state championship in 2017 and again in 2023. He's already authored a well-received book called My Up-Close View about his working with a who's who in radio and television sports broadcasting, all the while writing his columns with a keen eye on telling it the way it was, the way it actually was. No sensationalizing, believe it or not. No pot stirring. Larry didn't try to make news. He reported on the news. He didn't play favorites. He wrote about everybody the way they actually deserve to be written about. His best pieces, in my humble opinion, came when he wrote about things from the human interest side, showing people in our business as people in our business as much as for their on-air work. I'll tell you this, and those of us of a certain age know for sure, if you're sitting in this audience, that when we were in the young stages of our career, we could not wait until Friday morning to get the Los Angeles Times, because when it came out, by God, maybe our name was going to be in there. And sometimes it was in the little agate column right at the very end. And maybe you worked at a small station in Porterville, and you won a Division III Associated Press Award for doing play-by-play of some Bobby Sox softball game, but by God, Larry Stewart put it in the paper. It mattered to us. We hustled to get that Friday paper, and I hustled Larry every Friday for my entire career to read what you had to say about people in my business. No question about it. Larry had written all those columns. Before he comes up here, we have a special moment to share from one of his good friends. Johnny, if you would roll that clip, please.
Hello, friends. It's Jim Nance of CBS Sports. I just want to congratulate my friend Larry Stewart on the President's Award from the Southern California Sports Broadcasters. You know, Larry is just a giant in the industry of covering sports media. Truly, the best there ever was. And he was dogged in his reporting, and he did it with class, and he did it with integrity. And he is missed in that realm. There's never going to be another one like him. All those years with the Herald and 30-plus years with the LA Times. My Up-Close View, his book that documented that wild journey of his, it was an honor to provide a forward to that. And Larry, I wish I could be there today to celebrate you and your great career, but my best wishes and love to you and to Norma, and congratulations on this very special and deserved recognition.
Ladies and gentlemen, the recipient of this year's Stu Nahan Chuck Benedict Southern California Sports Broadcasters President's Award, the best radio TV columnist we have ever had in this town, Mr. Larry Stewart.
Nice to see so many friendly faces. You know, I'm not a broadcaster, I'm a writer, so I probably won't be quite as smooth as some of the people up here. Great to see Roy Firestone, he'll be up here in a minute. But, you know, I did come from a really, really, really small town, Strathmore. It's one intersection. And Dodgers moved to LA in 1958, and I was already a sports fan. When the Dodgers came here in 58, I was like everybody else. KFI boomed up through most of California. They were 50,000 watts at night, and so I could listen to Vin Scully with my transistor radio. And when the Dodgers and Giants moved to California, I thought, you know, maybe someday I'll actually get to go to a major league game. Not knowing that I would somehow have a long relationship with Vin Scully and so many broadcasters. I came down to the Herald from Visalia, big city near Strathmore, so that was the county seat of Tulare County. And I'm going to mention I have a friend from Visalia here, but I'll mention a few people before I give up the microphone. But I came down in 1969, was bottom number 22 man on a 22-man staff at the Herald Examiner, had a nightmare shift, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., and that didn't do much for my social life. Fortunately, I did, in 1971, I did happen to get out one night and meet my wife of 52 years, so that worked out. So, Bud Ferrillo, some of you remember Bud, real character. I would get in at 6 o'clock. There was a two-man staff that put out the Herald Examiner sports section, and it was my job to make sure there was no typos in the paper. If some of you might remember the Herald Examiner, there was a strike in '67, and they really didn't have proofreaders or anything like that, so there was a lot of typos. But if there was a typo in Bud Ferrillo's column, I really got both barrels. So it was kind of a surprise to me in May of 1973 when he said, hey, another writer, Dave Kirby, who's covering UCLA, was leaving the paper, and he kind of batted out a column on sports TV, and it was essentially what we call writing the log. He just wrote about the 2 or 3 sporting events that were going to be on TV that weekend. And so when Bud asked me if I wanted to do the column, I said, wow, yeah, sure. Do I get my picture in the paper? He says, you do if you do a good job. We're not putting it in the first few you write. So anyway, first thing I thought, well, I'm going to try something different right out of the box. You know, I'm thinking, what can I do to make it different? This is May of 1973, and there was a Laker playoff game that was televised both by Channel 5. Channel 5 was then the Laker station, with Chick Hearn and Lynn Shackelford. There was also ABC was televising the game as well, and that was Keith Jackson and Bill Russell. So I called a couple of TV stations and asked to get the ratings. I was wondering did LA watch Chick and Lynn Shackelford, or did they watch the ABC telecast? And I called a couple of stations, and you want what? We don't give out ratings. You know, that's not something we'd want in the newspaper. I finally found somebody that gave me the ratings, and Chick did win. It was like 11.5 to 11 or something like that. 22 rating, pretty good rating back then. They don't have ratings like that anymore with so many channels. But anyway, that started just a wonderful, wonderful journey of some 35 years of writing about broadcasters. And most of them cooperated because they knew the importance of what people said and opinions, particularly if they wrote for a newspaper, and particularly if they wrote for a major newspaper, an LA paper. So I think it was Marv Albert told me once that a few of them hired publicists right before their contracts were due. And it was, these publicists would work guys like me to write about their clients. I switched papers from the Herald Examiner. I was promoted to assistant sports editor. I moved up from number 22 to number 2 in 1974. And Alan Malamud was named the sports editor, and I was named the assistant sports editor after Bud Ferrillo, who was doing radio for KBC. The paper says you can't do the radio anymore. There's a conflict about Sears advertising, and they weren't plugging the Herald. But anyway, they actually fired Bud Ferrillo. Bud called me and said, they called me, and the managing editor called me in and says, hey, Bud Ferrillo's gone. You're in charge to me. And really? I was 27 years old. Bud Ferrillo called me and said, don't worry, the Herald can't publish without me. I'll be back on my job on Monday. Well, he wasn't, and the paper survived until I think it was 89, it finally folded. So I went to the Times, not as a TV columnist, as a layout guy. It was just a layout, you design the paper. And I wrote about a lot of stories about broadcasters, but the sports editor would not, at the Times, a guy named Bill Shirley would not give me the column. He says, he was from Arkansas. Well, we can't glorify the competition. But Bill Dwyer came in 1981, and I soon got my column, and the rest is history. I just good to see Joe Longo. We haven't seen each other in a while. And you are Joe, right? No. Paul McDonald, I'm sorry. You have a twin out there, yeah. Anyway, a few of my guests. I mentioned somebody from Visalia, Michael Young. Some of you know that. Michael played football and baseball at UCLA, spent 10 years as a wide receiver in the NFL, Rams, Broncos, that's where he really stood out, Chiefs and Eagles, and then he spent 9 years as a top executive for the Dodgers. He was the man in charge of raising revenue. He had a lot of titles. Chief Revenue Officer, I think, was one of them. But he brought in hundreds of millions of dollars to the Dodgers so they could sign the Dodgers that could win a World Series. He's now retired, lives up in beautiful Cambria, California, and he drove down specially just to make it to this lunch. Thank you, Michael. Michael's from Visalia, so that's the connection. His good friend, Terry Moore, good friend of mine, also football and baseball at UCLA. Longtime friend of mine, Denny Ryan. Legendary sports writer, Ron Rappaport. LA Times, LA Daily News, and then he really blossomed at the Chicago Sun-Times, written 6 books. His Ernie Banks book it's a must-read. Now I'll get to my family. I mentioned my wife. I've got my daughter there. I think my daughter Jill. She's in the entertainment field. But she got to meet a lot of sports casters when she was younger. And Charles Barkley loved Jill, among others. Where's Jim Hill? We were just talking about this. We were at a Laker game. Jill was a student at UCLA then. I don't know, she was 18 or 19 years old. And in the press lounge, and it wasn't a big Laker game, and there was just a few people less than a dozen, maybe 10 people. Tiger Woods was in there. And so Jim Hill knows Tiger, of course. He knows everybody. And so he was going to fix Jill up with Tiger Woods. I guess I'm kind of glad it didn't work out. Her husband, Courtney, probably is glad, too. And my awesome 12-year-old grandson, Teddy Sanford. Teddy was born on November 27th, 2012. That November 27th is also Chick Hearn's birthday. So we got the call about 3:30 at night, but when I get up the next morning, about 8 o'clock, I decided to call Marge. He says, Marge, I got to tell you, our grandson was born today, and I know it's Chick's birthday. And Marge says, well, maybe he'll be a sports broadcaster. And you know what? He may be. He already knows 10 times more about sports than I ever did. He gets all that information. He's a pretty good athlete, too. But, hey, I've talked enough. Thanks again. If anybody wants my daughter made sure I didn't bring a copy of my book up here. So, but if anybody, thanks you, Pete, for mentioning the book. And if anybody wants to know a little bit more about how that, I wrote it during the pandemic. Good to see Sam Logano. Just a connection, one more thing that Michael he and John Elway and Stan Kroenke started the Colorado Crush of the Arena League. When I first met you, you were calling the Avengers of the Arena League. Both you and Michael Young have gone up from the Arena League, yeah. Anyway, thanks again. Please come up and say hi.